He's the former military strongman who would now like the world to see him very differently, as a democratically elected leader, a statesman fighting what he calls terrorists. Egypt's president, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. But nobody in Egypt has ever been held to account for this. The 2013 massacre of hundreds of supporters of the former president. And since then, according to international human rights groups, tens of thousands of opponents of President Sisi have been imprisoned, hundreds sentenced to death.
Egypt is going through its worst human rights crisis for decades. Far from moving towards democracy, under Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the president of Egypt, what we've seen is a ferocious crackdown on dissent and opposition, the denial of fundamental rights and freedoms, and actually the rebuilding of the very authoritarian state that people in Tahrir Square and elsewhere were protesting and revolting against in 2011.
And yet President Sisi is by no means a pariah figure in Europe. He's already enjoyed visits to France and more recently to Germany. European governments may not approve of much of what President Sisi does at home, but they feel he provides a degree of stability in a troubled region. And as Paris and Berlin think, so does London.
We should not have any illusions about government's priorities, which are usually in descending order: security, both domestically and internationally, and economically. And we also should not forget that governments usually can only look no further ahead than the next elections, which means that when they are in office, they will have to talk to the people who happen to be in power or in office in other places as well.
Opposition politicians have called on the British government to cancel this visit because of concerns over Egypt's human rights record. The government will argue that this is an ideal opportunity to put those very concerns directly to the Egyptian president. But it's also shown in its recent dealings with countries such as China and Saudi Arabia that it is pragmatic and that it will put what it believes are Britain's strategic interests above any misgivings over human rights. Barnaby Phillips, Al Jazeera in central London.